Imagine a region of space so profoundly isolated that the very concept of distance begins to lose its meaning. Out there, roughly 15 billion miles away from the warmth of the sun, the interstellar medium behaves like a frictionless ocean of plasma, cosmic rays, and microscopic dust. Piercing through this silent expanse, at over 38,000 miles per hour, is a decaying machine. Its radioisotope thermoelectric generators, fueled by the decaying heat of plutonium-238, are dying. Year by year, watt by watt, its core temperature plummets, forcing its handlers back on a pale blue dot to shut down its scientific instruments, one by one. It is slowly going blind, freezing, succumbing to the creeping absolute zero of deep space. In the blink of a cosmic eye, its final transmission will fade into the background radiation of the galaxy. It will become a dead piece of engineering, an inert bullet of aluminum and titanium plummeting through the abyss. But bolted to the flank of this freezing spacecraft is an anomaly, a shimmering disk, an immortal echo of a civilization that, mathematically speaking, is practically guaranteed to vanish long before this object completes its first orbit around the galactic center. We are a species haunted by the terror of our own impermanence. We carve our histories into granite and build towering monuments of steel, fighting a desperate war against time. Yet the physics of our solar system dictate a violent, inescapable erasure. The continents will eventually fuse and fracture. The oceans will boil away into space. In approximately 5 billion years, our sun will exhaust its hydrogen core, violently expanding into a red giant that will swallow the inner planets. Every library, every archive, every footprint we ever left will be incinerated down to the subatomic level. Earth will be wiped clean. Facing the absolute certainty of this cosmic execution, we engineered a ghost. We took the raw data of our existence, translated it into the cold, universal language of binary code, electron transition states, and rotational periods of pulsars, and hurled it into the void. This was not a conversation starter. It was a tombstone. This is the anatomy of an artifact designed to outlive its creators, an engineering marvel built to endure the lethal radiation of the Milky Way for millions, perhaps billions, of years. It is a map, a mathematical puzzle, and a silent scream into the dark. If you find yourself captivated by the cold mechanics of the universe, the relentless march of deep time, and the mysteries that lie beyond our fragile atmosphere, subscribe and join us on this journey. Step into the quiet and let us observe the dark together, because long after the Earth is gone, our message will still be drifting through the silent ruins of space. To understand the absolute necessity of the artifact hurtling through the dark, we must first shatter a deeply ingrained human illusion. It is the illusion of permanence. When we think of preservation, our intuition immediately drifts toward the terrestrial. We imagine titanium vaults buried deep within granite mountains. We picture the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, encased in the frozen permafrost of the Arctic Circle, or sprawling server farms blinking in the dark, mirroring petabytes of human history across multiple continents. We equate the sheer mass of Earth with safety, but from the perspective of astrophysics and deep time, our planet is not a sanctuary. It is an active, relentless furnace of destruction. Earth is a terrible place to store a legacy. The very mechanics that make life possible here are also responsible for its perpetual, violent erasure. Beneath our feet, the lithosphere is not a static shell, but a fractured mosaic of tectonic plates grinding against one another. Through the process of subduction, the ocean floor is continuously dragged down into the mantle, plunging into a subterranean ocean of magma at temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of this planetary scale recycling program, the oldest oceanic crust on Earth is barely 200 million years old. Any monument, any vault, any physical trace of an advanced civilization left on the surface or buried in the crust will eventually be swallowed, melted down, and extruded back to the surface as unrecognizable basalt. And if the internal mechanics of the planet do not erase us, the external physics of our solar system will. The anchor of our existence, the sun, is not a permanent fixture. It is a terrifyingly delicate nuclear fusion reactor, held together by the temporary balance between the crushing inward force of its own immense gravity and the explosive outward pressure of hydrogen fusing into helium in its core. This state of hydrostatic equilibrium has a strict expiration date. In roughly 5 billion years, the hydrogen fuel in the core will be exhausted. The core will collapse under its own weight, driving temperatures high enough to ignite the shell of hydrogen surrounding it. The outer layers of the sun will balloon outward, transforming our star into a red giant. This is not a theoretical abstraction. It is a mathematical certainty written in the laws of stellar thermodynamics. The expanding solar atmosphere will swallow Mercury. It will incinerate Venus, and as it reaches Earth, the oceans will not simply evaporate. The sheer thermal radiation will break down the water molecules, allowing the hydrogen to escape into the void. The silicate rocks of the Earth's crust will melt into a glowing sea of glass and magma. The atmospheric drag from the expanding sun will cause the planet's orbit to decay, slowly spiraling inward until Earth is entirely vaporized within the solar envelope. Every book ever written, every server ever built, every physical atom of our architectural triumphs will be reduced to a highly ionized plasma. To leave a message on Earth is to write on a blackboard inside a burning house. Therefore, to achieve true permanence, human engineers in the late 1970s had to invert their intuition. They had to look away from the perceived safety of solid ground and turn toward the most hostile, lethal environment known to science, the vacuum of interstellar space. Our common sense dictates that space is a violent, destructive place. We think of asteroid impacts, extreme temperature fluctuations, and lethal doses of radiation. But once a spacecraft crosses the heliopause, magnetic boundary, where the solar wind is finally halted by the pressure of the interstellar medium, the rules of the game change entirely. The void between the stars is actually the ultimate cryogenic vault. It is an environment of staggering emptiness. While the air we breathe at sea level contains roughly 25 quintillion molecules per cubic centimeter, the interstellar medium contains, on average, less than 1 atom per cubic centimeter. It is a vacuum so profound that the concept of aerodynamic friction ceases to exist. There is no oxygen to cause oxidation. There is no water to cause corrosion. An object moving through this space will not rust, it will not weather, and it will not degrade through any chemical process familiar to human engineering. But navigating this realization was only the first intellectual hurdle. If you know that deep space is the only medium capable of preserving a message for billions of years, the immediate, paralyzing question becomes, what exactly do you build? In the early days of deep space exploration, with the Pioneer 10 and 11 missions, scientists like Carl Sagan and Frank Drake grappled with this exact nightmare. They had attached small anodized aluminum plaques to the Pioneer probes, featuring simple line drawings of human figures and a rudimentary map showing the location of our Sun relative to 14 pulsars. It was a brilliant conceptual leap, an attempt to use the rotational periods of dying stars as a galactic lighthouse system. But the pioneer plaques were frustratingly limited. They were static. They conveyed the coordinates of our origin, but they contained no depth, no texture, no data about who we actually were. They were the equivalent of a business card dropped in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. When the Voyager program was conceived to twin probes designed to take advantage of a rare planetary alignment that occurs only once every 176 years, allowing them to slingshot past Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune before being ejected from the solar system entirely, Sagan and his team realized they had a fleeting window to do something monumental. They needed to encode an encyclopedic volume of human data onto a physical medium that could survive the apocalypse. Modern intuition would scream for a digital solution. Today, we measure our archives in terabytes and petabytes, storing them on solid-state drives or magnetic tape. If tasked with sending an archive into space today, a layman would suggest loading a ruggedized hard drive with a comprehensive database of human knowledge. But digital memory, in the brutal reality of the cosmos, is shockingly fragile. A digital hard drive operates by storing binary data ones and zeros as microscopic magnetic charges on a platter, or as electrons trapped in the floating gates of billions of microscopic transistors. To read digital data, you require a complex, highly specific operating system, a processor capable of executing the exact instruction set architecture and precise electrical currents. But more importantly, the interstellar medium is awash with cosmic rays. These are not rays of light. They are high-energy, atomic nuclei, mostly protons, ejected by supernova and active galactic nuclei, traveling at nearly the speed of light. When a high-energy cosmic ray strikes a silicon microchip, it acts like a microscopic artillery shell. It ionizes the semiconductor material, altering the electrical charge in the transistors. This phenomenon, known in aerospace engineering as a single event upset or a bit flip, randomly changes a digital 0 to a 1 or a 1 to a 0. Leave a solid-state drive in deep space for 1 million years, subjected to the relentless bombardment of galactic cosmic radiation, and the data will be thoroughly scrambled. The precise mathematical order of the digital files will be irreversibly corrupted into random noise. Furthermore, any alien intelligence that discovers the drive would have no conceivable way to decode the proprietary formatting of human software. Digital is a dead end. The engineers needed a medium that was immune to bit flipping. They needed a format where the information was not stored as fragile magnetic states, but as absolute, unalterable physical topology. They needed an analog artifact, and so they turned to a technology that was already considered archaic by the cutting-edge standards of the time: the phonograph record. A phonograph record does not store representations of sound, it stores the actual physical shape of the sound waves themselves. When an acoustic wave hits a microphone, the changing air pressure is converted into an electrical signal, which drives a mechanical stylus to carve a microscopic, continuous groove into a master disc. The audio is literally etched into the geometry of the material. To retrieve the data, one does not need a microchip or a software interface. One simply needs a needle, an acoustic amplifier, and the correct speed of rotation. The mechanics of playback can be deduced purely from visual inspection and basic physics. It is the ultimate universal format. A high-energy cosmic ray might blast a microscopic hole straight through the record, but it will only cause a split-second pop in the audio. The surrounding topological data remains completely intact, but a standard vinyl record would not survive the extreme temperature variations and the slow, agonizing erosion caused by micrometeorites. The material science of the artifact had to be pushed to its absolute limits. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory fabricated a 12-inch disc made of solid copper. Copper was chosen for its malleability, allowing the intricate microscopic grooves, some no wider than a human hair, to be stamped with extreme precision. However, bare copper would eventually tarnish or degrade even from the microscopic traces of dust in the solar system. Therefore, the entire copper substrate was heavily electroplated with pure gold. Gold is a noble metal. It possesses an atomic structure that renders it fiercely unreactive. It does not oxidize, it does not corrode, and it resists the adherence of foreign particles. By sealing the copper data grooves beneath a thick layer of gold, the engineers effectively froze the physical information in time. The artifact was then sealed inside an aluminum electroplated jacket designed to act as a physical shield against the abrasion of interstellar dust. Yet, there was one final, deeply philosophical engineering problem to solve. If this golden disk is destined to wander the galaxy for millions of years, how would an extraterrestrial intelligence know when it was launched? How do you attach a timestamp to an object that will outlive the very concept of human calendars? You cannot use years, because a year is simply the time it takes the Earth to orbit the Sun. A metric utterly meaningless to a civilization born under a different star. The engineers needed a clock built into the fundamental laws of physics. Their solution was brilliantly cold. They took an ultra-pure sample of the isotope uranium-238 and electroplated it onto the aluminum cover of the record. Uranium-238 is highly unstable. Through the precise laws of quantum mechanics, its nucleus naturally decays, slowly transforming into Lead-206. This radioactive decay does not happen randomly. It occurs at a strict, mathematically predictable rate. The half-life of uranium-238 is 4.468 billion years. This means that if an alien civilization recovers the Voyager probe deep in the uncharted future, they can simply scrape off a microscopic sample of that electroplated patch. By using mass spectrometry to measure the exact ratio of remaining uranium-238 to the newly formed Lead-206, they will calculate precisely how long the probe has been drifting. The artifact carries its own dying heartbeat, ticking away the eons, a radiometric stopwatch that will continue to run long after the hands that placed it there have turned to ash. Every physical parameter of the golden record was optimized for a timeline that breaks human comprehension. The grooves, the gold plating, the uranium clock, they are all testaments to the chilling realization that to speak to the cosmos, we had to build something that could survive the death of our world. But engineering the physical survival of the disk was merely a matter of metallurgy and physics. The far more terrifying challenge, the problem that pushed some of the brightest minds on Earth to the brink of philosophical despair, was what to actually put on it. Because out there, beyond the protective cocoon of our atmosphere, the universe speaks a language devoid of human emotion, a language built strictly on radiation, gravity, and silence. And bridging that gap requires crossing a barrier far more formidable than the physical distance between the stars. To grasp the true magnitude of what we have done, we must first confront the terrifying geometry of the abyss this artifact is currently crossing. We throw around terms like deep space and interstellar travel with a casual arrogance, conditioned by science fiction to imagine the galaxy as a navigable ocean populated by hyperdrives and glowing warp tunnels. The reality is far more suffocating. The reality is a suffocating, hyperextended emptiness that paralyzes the human mind when properly quantified. Right now, Voyager 1 is moving at approximately 38,000 miles per hour relative to the Sun. At this velocity, it crosses the equivalent of the entire breadth of the continental United States in under 5 minutes. It is a speed so blistering that if a terrestrial aircraft were to achieve it within our atmosphere, the aerodynamic friction would instantly vaporize the metal, turning the craft into a streak of ionized plasma. Yet, in the cosmic theater, 38,000 miles per hour is a crawl. It is the velocity of a glacier. To achieve even this modest speed, humanity had to steal momentum from the gods. Chemical rockets alone, governed by the tyranny of the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, simply cannot carry enough fuel to break free of the Sun's immense gravitational well and achieve escape velocity from the solar system. The fuel required adds mass, and that mass requires more fuel to lift, creating an inescapable mathematical trap. The engineers of the 1970s realized they could never build a rocket powerful enough. Instead, they had to use the orbital mechanics of the planets themselves. They exploited a rare geometric anomaly, an alignment of the outer gas giants Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune that occurs only once every 176 years. By precisely calculating the trajectory, they aimed the spacecraft not at where Jupiter was, but where Jupiter was going to be. As the probe fell into the massive gravitational chasm of the gas giant, it was accelerated to terrifying speeds. But rather than being swallowed, its trajectory was meticulously calculated to skim the edge of the gravity well, allowing it to slingshot outward. In physics, this is known as a gravity assist or an elastic collision. The spacecraft effectively stole a microscopic fraction of Jupiter's orbital angular momentum, permanently slowing the giant planet's orbit around the Sun by about 1 foot per trillion years, and adding tens of thousands of miles per hour to the probe's own velocity. It bounced from Jupiter to Saturn, stealing speed at every encounter, a cosmic game of billiards played across billions of miles, until it was finally hurled outward, achieving the escape velocity required to leave the solar system forever. And yet, despite this monumental theft of planetary momentum, the probe is effectively standing still against the backdrop of the Milky Way. It has been falling upward, away from the Sun, for nearly half a century. It has crossed the termination shock, the violent, invisible boundary where the solar wind crashes into the interstellar medium and violently slows down. It has pierced the heliopause, leaving the magnetic bubble of our star behind. But it has barely left the front porch. To truly leave the solar system, it must navigate the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is not a dense field of tumbling asteroids as depicted in cinematic asteroid belts. It is a spherical shell of icy debris, the frozen, discarded scraps left over from the formation of our solar system 4.5 billion years ago. It begins at roughly 2,000 astronomical units from the Sun, 2,000 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun, and extends outward to perhaps 100,000 astronomical units. It is a graveyard of comets, a region so unimaginably vast and dark that the Sun appears only as a slightly brighter star in the black sky, offering zero heat at its current blistering speed. It will take the Golden Record about 300 years just to reach the inner edge of the Oort cloud. It will take another 30,000 years to quietly drift through it. 30,000 years of total darkness, passing invisible mountains of dirty ice separated by millions of miles of empty vacuum. Only then, roughly 40,000 years from today, will it make its first close approach to another star, a faint red dwarf known as Gliese 445, and by close approach, astrophysics means it will pass within 1.6 light-years of the star, a distance so vast that if Gliese 445 had planets, and those planets had astronomers looking through telescopes, the probe would be absolutely invisible. The scale of this emptiness dictates a chilling reality. The Golden Record is not a message in a bottle designed to be found. Space is too vast, and the artifact is too small. If you were to blindfold a man, place him in the center of the Sahara Desert, and ask him to find a single, specific grain of sand that you had painted red, the odds of his success are infinitely greater than an alien civilization accidentally stumbling upon a 12-inch copper disc in the interstellar void. The space between stars is the equivalent of a global server network, where the latency between nodes is measured in tens of thousands of years. It is an architecture of profound isolation. Therefore, the architects of the record had to design it under the grim assumption that it would likely never be intercepted while drifting in the open ocean of space. Its only real hope of discovery relies on it being swept up in the gravitational net of another star system, millions of years from now, pulled into a decaying orbit and found by an advanced civilization meticulously surveying their own cosmic backyard. If that impossibly rare statistical miracle were to occur, the finders would be confronted with a brilliant, maddening puzzle. Engraved on the aluminum cover of the record, right next to the electroplated uranium clock, is a map. But how do you draw a map for an alien intelligence? You cannot use human coordinates. North, south, up, and down are terrestrial illusions, meaningless outside our atmosphere. You cannot use constellations because the arrangement of stars in the sky is merely a localized optical illusion that warps and changes depending on where you are in the galaxy. Over the millions of years this probe will travel, the stars themselves will drift, orbiting the galactic center at different speeds. The night sky of Earth 1 million years from now will be completely unrecognizable. To leave a map that remains accurate across deep time, you need landmarks that are mathematically absolute and terrifyingly powerful. The engineers chose pulsars. When a massive star reaches the end of its life, it does not simply fade away. It detonates in a supernova, a violently explosive death that briefly outshines entire galaxies. What remains of the star's core collapses inward under its own immense gravity. The collapse is so catastrophic that the very atoms are crushed. Electrons are driven into protons, fusing them into a hyperdense sphere of pure neutrons. This is a neutron star. It packs the mass of 500,000 Earths into a sphere barely 12 miles across. A single teaspoon of neutron star material weighs 10 million tons. Due to the conservation of angular momentum, the same physics that makes a figure skater spin faster when they pull their arms in the collapsing core begins to spin at an unimaginably rapid rate. It generates a magnetic field trillions of times stronger than Earth's, channeling highly focused beams of electromagnetic radiation out of its magnetic poles. As the neutron star spins, these beams sweep across the galaxy like the beams of a cosmic lighthouse. If Earth happens to be in the line of sight of one of these sweeping beams, Our radio telescopes detect a precise, rhythmic pulse of energy. We call them pulsars, because pulsars have enormous mass and rotational inertia. Their spin rates are incredibly stable. Some spin hundreds of times per second, keeping time more accurately than the finest atomic clocks ever built by man. They are the metronomes of the galaxy. On the cover of the Golden Record, humanity etched a starburst diagram. The center of the starburst represents our sun. Radiating outward from the center are 14 solid lines, each pointing toward a specific, known pulsar. But a line is not enough. You must identify which pulsar it points to. To do this, the engineers etched a delicate sequence of dashes and solid lines along each vector. It looks like random scratches to the untrained eye, but it is actually binary code. This binary code dictates the exact rotational period, the precise pulse rate of each specific pulsar at the exact moment the spacecraft was launched. But here lies the genius and the terror of interstellar communication. You cannot express this binary number in seconds, because seconds are a human invention based on the Earth's rotation. You need a universal yardstick, a unit of time that is identical everywhere in the cosmos. The solution was found in the most abundant element in the universe, hydrogen. A neutral hydrogen atom consists of a single proton and a single electron, according to the strange, probabilistic rules of quantum mechanics. That electron has a property called spin. Occasionally, the electron will spontaneously flip its spin direction to align with the proton, dropping to a slightly lower energy state. When it does this, it emits a microscopic pulse of microwave radiation. This is known as the hyperfine transition of neutral hydrogen. The time it takes for this microscopic wave to complete one cycle is exactly 0.704 billionths of a second. This number is hard-coded into the fabric of reality. It is the same on Earth as it is in the Andromeda galaxy. Etched into the corner of the record's cover is a simple diagram of a hydrogen atom undergoing this exact quantum flip. It is a visual cipher. It tells the alien observer, use the time it takes for this atomic transition to occur as your base unit of 1 by multiplying the binary numbers on the pulsar map by the hydrogen transition time. An alien astrophysicist can calculate the exact spin rate of the 14 lighthouses. And because pulsars slowly, predictably, lose rotational energy over millions of years, the alien can compare the spin rates etched on the record with the spin rates they observe in the sky today. Through this terrifyingly complex algebra, they can calculate exactly when the probe was launched, and by tracing the 14 lines backward, they can pinpoint the exact origin point of the launch. We gave them an X marks the spot. We gave them our home address, written in the dying pulses of crushed stars. But a map only tells you where a tomb is located. It does not tell you who is buried inside. To convey the essence of humanity, the record contains a carefully curated archive of our planet. It holds 115 images, a variety of natural sounds, the wind, the rain, the crash of ocean surf, the haunting calls of humpback whales, and musical selections ranging from Bach and Beethoven to the blues of Blind Willie Johnson and the polyphonic chants of pygmy tribes. It contains greetings in 55 different languages. Yet, the method by which we encoded the images is perhaps the most bizarre and brilliant engineering feat of the entire project. We think of images as visual data. A photograph is something you look at, but you cannot physically print 115 high-resolution photographs onto a 12-inch copper disc and expect them to survive. The engineers had to translate light into physical motion. They had to turn photographs into sound. If you were to place the golden record on a turntable, drop the needle into the correct groove, and press play, you would not hear a beautiful symphony at first. You would be violently assaulted by a noise that sounds like a malfunctioning fax machine screaming into a distorted amplifier. It is a harsh, rhythmic, grating screech filled with high-pitched squeals and aggressive static. It sounds hostile. It sounds like digital agony. This noise is the sound of analog television technology. Every image was broken down into 512 vertical lines. The brightness of the image at any given microscopic point along that line was translated into an electrical frequency. A bright white spot on the photograph produced a high-frequency sound. A dark shadow produced a low-frequency rumble. By feeding this audio signal into an oscilloscope, a standard piece of scientific equipment that plots electrical voltage on a screen, the screeching audio forces the electron beam to sweep back and forth, literally drawing the image onto the glass, line by agonizing line. We forced the visual beauty of our world, the structure of DNA, the silhouette of a woman in a supermarket, the sprawling geometry of a city, the chaotic beauty of an autumn forest, into a harsh, screaming, mechanical noise, trusting that whoever finds it will be smart enough to build a machine to listen to the picture. But among all the mathematical diagrams, the architectural photos, and the carefully selected music, there is one recording that is profoundly different. It is an artifact of pure, unadulterated human vulnerability. The team decided to include the sound of a human brain. Anne Druyan, the creative director of the project, was hooked up to an electroencephalogram, an EEG, and an electrocardiogram. For exactly 1 hour, the electrical impulses of her brain, the firing of her synapses, and the beating of her heart were recorded and compressed into a sound wave. During that hour, she was instructed to think about the history of Earth, the violence of human civilization, the beauty of our art, and what it meant to fall in love. The resulting audio is not a voice. It is a rhythmic, oscillating drone, like the deep hum of a massive electrical transformer mixed with the erratic ticking of a Geiger counter. It is the raw, unedited electrical signature of human consciousness. We took the neurochemical electricity of a single human mind, pondering the terror and beauty of existence, froze it into the topology of a gold-plated disk, and hurled it into a vacuum where the temperature is barely above absolute zero. It is a ghost trapped in copper, a phantom of human thought that will outlive the brain that generated it by billions of years. And yet, as perfect as this engineering seems, as beautifully poetic as the mathematics of the golden record are, there is a fundamental flaw in the architecture of this message, a flaw that threatens to render the entire multi-billion-year journey utterly meaningless. When we look closely at the math, the physics of deep time, and the cruel reality of evolutionary divergence, a deeply unsettling paradox begins to emerge from the silence. We launched this artifact into the dark, operating under a monumental, almost arrogant assumption. It is an assumption that underpins our entire philosophy of interstellar communication, the belief that mathematics is a universal language. We look at the hydrogen atom, the spin of a pulsar, and the binary code etched into the golden cover, and we comfort ourselves with the thought that physics is the same everywhere. 2 + 2 = 4. Whether you are on Earth or orbiting a supermassive black hole in the Andromeda Galaxy. Therefore, we reason, any intelligence capable of building a starship to intercept our probe must inherently understand the rigid, objective architecture of the cosmos. We believe that because we share the same universe, we must share the same logic. But this is an anthropocentric illusion. It is a cognitive trap born from the specific, unrepeatable evolutionary pressures of our own planet. Human mathematics and human logic are not necessarily the objective truth of the universe. They are the byproduct of a primate brain adapting to survive in a three-dimensional environment governed by Earth's specific gravitational pull. We count in a linear sequence because we experience time strictly as a one-way thermodynamic arrow, moving from past to future. Our geometry is based on the optical processing of light hitting a retina. But suppose we encounter an intelligence that evolved deep within the crushing pressure of a subsurface ocean on a rogue planet, a species that navigates entirely by sensing microscopic shifts in magnetic fields rather than interpreting the electromagnetic spectrum we call visible light. Their nervous systems might not process reality as distinct, isolated objects in empty space. They might perceive the universe as a continuous, vibrating fluid dynamic. To such a mind, the stark, linear binary code etched on the golden record, the dashes and solid lines mapping the pulsars might be entirely illegible. Not because they are not intelligent, but because their fundamental framework of reality does not parse discrete geometric symbols. We handed them a dictionary, completely oblivious to the terrifying possibility that they might not even possess the concept of a book. This brings us to the first insurmountable wall in our attempt to cheat death: the laws of information theory. In 1948, mathematician Claude Shannon published a foundational paper that birthed the digital age. He proved that information is a quantifiable physical property, much like mass or energy, and it is inextricably linked to entropy. Shannon demonstrated that in any communication system, you must constantly battle against the background noise of the medium. To ensure a message arrives intact, you must encode it with recognizable patterns, a structured redundancy that allows the receiver to distinguish the signal from the chaotic static of the channel. But Shannon also proved a terrifying paradox. Maximum information density is mathematically indistinguishable from maximum entropy. In other words, a highly compressed, incredibly complex data stream, like the analog television signals encoding the 115 images on the golden record, looks exactly like random noise to anyone who does not possess the specific cryptographic key to decode it. Imagine an alien machine sweeping the interstellar vacuum with highly sensitive electromagnetic sensors. It detects an anomaly, locks onto a microscopic thermal signature, and pulls a freezing, dead cylinder of aluminum and titanium into its cargo bay. The extraterrestrial engineers extract the 12-inch copper disc. They scan its surface at the microscopic level. They will see the microscopic grooves. They will measure the isotopic decay of the uranium. But when they trace the topological ridges of the audio tracks, what will they actually comprehend? Without the cultural context of a phonograph, without the biological context of an eardrum designed to capture acoustic pressure waves vibrating through an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, the grooves on the record are simply jagged, asymmetrical valleys of copper. To an intelligence that communicates via chemical bioluminescence or quantum entanglement, the concept of dragging a microscopic needle through a trench to vibrate a membrane might be as fundamentally absurd as trying to taste a mathematical equation. They might conclude the grooves are a byproduct of our manufacturing process, a microscopic texture designed to dissipate heat, or simply the randomized scarring of micrometeorite impacts sustained over millions of years. We have historical precedent for this exact cognitive failure played out in reverse. We know exactly what happens when a brilliant mind looks at the cosmos and misinterprets the data. In the late autumn of 1960, the telescope was a sprawling, primitive field of wooden poles and miles of copper wire, designed to track quasars. The data output was not a digital screen, but a continuous stream of paper unspooling from a chart recorder, upon which a mechanical pen sketched the incoming radio waves in real time. Amidst miles of random static generated by the background radiation of the galaxy, Bell Bernal noticed an anomaly. It was a rhythmic, incredibly precise pulse. It peaked every 1.337 seconds. The signal was too clean. It was too fast, and its mathematical regularity defied every known model of stellar physics at the time. A star is a chaotic, boiling furnace of plasma. It does not tick like a Swiss watch. The Cambridge team was paralyzed by the implications. For a brief, terrifying window of time, the brightest minds in astrophysics genuinely believed they had intercepted an artificial beacon. They internally named the signal LGM-1, an acronym for Little Green Men. They theorized it was a navigational lighthouse built by a hyper-advanced civilization, sweeping its beam across the Earth. It took months of agonizing theoretical physics to realize they were not looking at an alien machine, but a natural phenomenon so extreme it mimicked artificial engineering. A rapidly spinning neutron star, which we now call a pulsar. We looked into the dark, saw a perfect mathematical rhythm, and narcissistically projected our own intelligence onto the void. When the finders of the Golden Record drag the artifact into their laboratories, they will face the exact same epistemological nightmare. They will see the 14 lines pointing outward from a central star. They will analyze the binary dashes, but because the universe is naturally capable of producing staggering geometric precision, the aliens might assume the artifact is a piece of strange, naturally occurring cosmic debris, polished by interstellar dust and irradiated by solar winds. Or worse, they might interpret our encoded images of human anatomy and terrestrial landscapes not as a greeting, but as a biological weapon, a viral genetic sequence designed to infect their databases. By trying to compress the entirety of the human experience into a single piece of metal, we pushed the data density so high that we may have guaranteed it will be interpreted as absolute noise. But even if we assume they overcome the cognitive barrier, even if they perfectly deduce the mechanics of the phonograph and project the screeching analog signals onto a screen to see our faces, they will crash headfirst into an even more unforgiving barrier: the physics of deep time. The Golden Record is essentially a time capsule, but it is moving through a medium where time itself acts as a cosmic incinerator. We plotted the map using 14 specific pulsars. It was an act of desperate genius, but it contains a fatal flaw born of orbital mechanics. The galaxy is not a static painting. It is a churning, violently rotating disk of gravity. The stars are not fixed in place. They are orbiting the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way at different velocities. Our Sun takes roughly 230 million years to complete one galactic orbit. The pulsars we used as our cosmic lighthouses have their own unique trajectories. Over the tens of millions of years it will take for the Voyager probe to cross meaningful distances, the entire architecture of the Milky Way will warp and distort. The constellations will rip themselves apart. The pulsars we mapped will drift thousands of light years from their current coordinates. Some will lose their rotational momentum entirely, spinning down until their beams fade into the dark, going silent forever. The precise geometric starburst we etched onto the cover will slowly degrade into a map of a ghost town, pointing toward stars that no longer exist, using coordinates that no longer align with physical reality. The map has an expiration date, and the spacecraft is traveling far too slowly to beat the clock. This forces us to confront the chilling mathematics of the Drake equation, specifically its most depressing variable, L. In astrophysics, L represents the longevity of a technologically advanced civilization. How long does a species survive after it discovers how to harness radio waves, split the atom, and leave its planet before it inevitably destroys itself or is wiped out by a cosmic extinction event? Humanity has possessed radio astronomy for barely a century. We have possessed nuclear weapons for even less. In the grand timeline of the 4.5 billion-year-old Earth, our technological window is a microscopic sliver, a fraction of a millisecond. For interstellar communication to work, two civilizations must not only exist within the same vast ocean of space, but their microscopic windows of technological capability must perfectly overlap in time. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a vast, pitch-black continent. Each has a flashlight. Each is allowed to turn the flashlight on for exactly 1 second at any random point over the course of 1 billion years. The odds of them turning on their lights at the exact same moment, facing the exact right direction, and seeing each other in the dark are mathematically indistinguishable from zero. The alien civilization that eventually intercepts the golden record will not be our contemporaries. By the time the artifact drifts into their star system, our sun will have likely incinerated the Earth. We will be dust. The record is not an opening to a dialogue. It is a necro-communication. It is a voice from a crypt. We are effectively screaming into a canyon where the echo takes 100 million years to return, knowing full well we will not be here to hear it. Yet, there is a final, far darker paradigm to consider regarding the map we placed on the cover, a mathematical conflict that terrified a subset of physicists when the project was first proposed. We operated on the assumption that a civilization capable of finding the probe would inherently possess a sense of cosmic altruism. We assumed that advanced intelligence guarantees benevolence, but if we apply the rigid, cold logic of game theory to interstellar relations, this assumption collapses into an existential threat. In 1950, mathematicians developed a concept called the prisoner's dilemma, which illustrates why two completely rational entities might not cooperate, even when it is in their best interest to do so. When you expand this to the scale of the cosmos, it evolves into what astrophysicists refer to as the dark forest hypothesis. The universe is vast, but habitable planets, liquid water, and stable stellar environments are finite resources, because the speed of light places an absolute speed limit on how fast information can travel. Communication between solar systems is plagued by massive latency. If an alien civilization detects our probe and decodes the map, they are looking at data that is millions of years out of date. They cannot know our current technological capabilities. They cannot know our moral framework. They cannot know if we have evolved into a peaceful galactic federation or an aggressive, expanding empire of biological locusts. In a scenario of absolute uncertainty, where the survival of your own species is the ultimate biological imperative, the mathematics of the Nash equilibrium dictate that the most rational, mathematically defensive move upon discovering another civilization is not to send a greeting. It is to launch a relativistic kill vehicle, a preemptive strike designed to travel at a fraction of the speed of light to obliterate the source of the signal before it can potentially become a threat. You do not risk your own survival on the naive hope that the strangers in the dark are friendly. You eliminate the unknown variable by etching the exact pulsar coordinates of our sun onto a plaque designed to survive until the end of time. We didn't just leave a monument. We published our tactical coordinates to a universe that operates entirely on the principles of apex predation and evolutionary competition. We painted a target on the back of our own solar system, banking our entire existence on the fragile hope that whoever finds the map has evolved beyond the primal need to conquer. We sent a blind messenger into a jungle carrying a detailed blueprint of our home, and so the paradox crystallizes. If the message is too complex, it becomes indistinguishable from the background noise of the universe, ignored as dead copper drifting through the void. If the message is decoded, it leads the receiver to a map that will be hopelessly obsolete, pointing to a dead star and a vaporized planet. And if, by some terrifying miracle, they decode the message, compensate for the galactic drift of the pulsars, and trace the vector back to our sun before we are entirely gone, the logic of astrophysics suggests they may not come to marvel at our classical music. They may come to neutralize a potential threat. The engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory poured the very soul of the human race into an immortal artifact, but immortality in a vacuum is a curse. The disk is trapped in a state of suspended animation, a perfect technological ghost ship, perfectly preserving a meaning that is rapidly decaying with every mile it travels. It is locked in a mathematical cage, moving too slowly to beat the death of the stars, speaking a language that requires the listener to be human, and carrying a map that only leads to a grave. As the radioactive decay of the uranium clock slowly ticks away the eons, the true horror of the Voyager mission reveals itself. We did not conquer the silence of the universe. We merely gave the silence a shape. When we strip away the romanticism of the Voyager mission and examine it through the cold, unforgiving lens of theoretical physics, we are left staring at a chilling thermodynamic truth. The universe is not merely indifferent to our existence. It is fundamentally hostile to the very concept of order. The second law of thermodynamics stands as the ultimate, inescapable executioner of all things. It dictates that entropy, the measure of chaos, randomness, and disorder within a closed system, must continuously increase over time. Stars exhaust their nuclear fuel and collapse into dark remnants. Orbits decay, sending planets spiraling into the stellar furnaces that birthed them. Atomic structures vibrate until chemical bonds shatter, and majestic mountain ranges are inevitably ground down to microscopic dust, scattered across the void by solar winds. In the grand, mechanical grinding of the cosmos, the existence of a highly organized structure, whether it is a complex biological cell vibrating with life, a sprawling megacity humming with electrical currents, or a civilization capable of mapping the stars, is a profound anomaly. It is a temporary, localized rebellion against the inescapable physics of decay. Every breath we take, every architectural triumph we erect, and every mathematical equation we solve requires us to burn massive amounts of energy simply to push back the encroaching chaos for one more day. But the universe possesses infinite time, and we do not. Eventually, the energy runs out. The system collapses. The entropy of our solar system will inevitably reach its maximum state. reducing everything humanity has ever built to a cold, uniform, and meaningless soup of subatomic particles. Against this backdrop of guaranteed cosmic erasure, the golden record ceases to be a mere scientific instrument. It becomes a philosophical weapon of staggering proportions. It represents the first time in the 4.5 billion-year history of our volatile planet that a biological organism has successfully engineered a piece of concentrated information designed specifically to survive the death of its host star. By bolting that gold-plated copper disk to the flank of a dying, freezing probe, we committed an act of unprecedented cosmic defiance. We took the highly fragile, localized order of human consciousness, the chaotic symphony of our history, the architecture of our biology, and the electrical impulses of our minds, and exported it into the deep freeze of the interstellar medium. We effectively built an indestructible backup drive for a species that is mathematically doomed to go extinct. Let us examine the terrifying consequences of this act, for it forces a total paradigm shift in how we understand our place in reality. For thousands of years, human civilization has operated under the comforting, arrogant assumption that Earth is the ultimate vault of our legacy. We carved the pyramids of Giza out of solid limestone, poured millions of tons of concrete to build the Hoover Dam, and erected towering steel monoliths in Manhattan with the subconscious, unshakable belief that the ground beneath them was eternal. We bury our dead in the crust of the earth, trusting the planet to keep them safe. But the physics of the Voyager mission shatter this illusion entirely. It proves that the Earth is not a vault. It is merely an incubator. And incubators, by the strict laws of planetary mechanics, are inherently temporary. The true, lasting monument to human existence is not buried in the tectonic plates of our world. It is currently plunging through the dark, icy debris of the Oort cloud at 38,000 miles per hour. We have decentralized our legacy. We have outsourced our memory to the void. This realization fundamentally alters our understanding of what it means to exist as a sentient species. Biology is a terrifyingly fragile, messy, and highly localized phenomenon. The human body is entirely dependent on a hyperspecific atmospheric pressure, a narrow temperature band, and a constant, uninterrupted supply of liquid water. If you alter the gravitational constant of Earth by even a microscopic fraction, or strip away the magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation for a few weeks, the entire biosphere collapses into a sterilized wasteland. We are geographically trapped at the bottom of a gravity well, but the golden record demonstrates a terrifying evolution. While our biology is chained to this rock, our information is not. Through the mathematics of analog encoding and the material science of noble metals, we have successfully divorced the human soul from the biological wetware that created it. The artifact proves that human identity, our art, our geometry, the sound of a mother's voice, the rhythmic pulsing of a human brainwave can be translated into pure physical topology. It can be reduced to microscopic ridges and valleys of copper, capable of enduring environments that would instantly vaporize human flesh. In a profound, almost disturbing way, the golden record is the first definitive step toward a post-biological existence. It suggests that the ultimate, inescapable destiny of an advanced civilization is not to conquer the stars with fragile bodies of meat and bone, but to saturate the universe with their data, to abandon the wet, rotting confines of a planetary surface and become pure, indestructible information, riding the dark, frictionless currents of space long after their home world has been swallowed by a dying sun. But this transition from biological entity to interstellar ghost carries a crushing psychological weight. It forces us to confront the abyss of deep time on a scale that the primate brain was never evolved to process or withstand. When astrophysicists talk about millions or billions of years, the numbers become comfortably abstract, devoid of any real emotional resonance. We cannot picture 1,000,000 years any more than we can picture $1 billion in single bills. But the physical reality of the golden record anchors those incomprehensible numbers in a terrifyingly concrete object. It is a clock ticking away the eons, forcing us to watch the hands move. Imagine the physical state of the artifact 100 million years from now. Long before that date, the plutonium-238 inside the probe's generators will have decayed into inert lead. The electrical heart of the spacecraft will have stopped beating, its cameras, its spectrometers, its thrusters all dead. The probe will be a frozen, blind, and dumb corpse of titanium and aluminum encased in a microscopic shell of interstellar frost, plunging through the abyss at nearly 3 degrees above absolute zero. The copper grooves of the record will still be perfectly sealed beneath their gold plating. The uranium isotope on the cover will have decayed precisely according to the laws of quantum mechanics, silently marking the staggering passage of time. But back where the journey began, the coordinates etched on the cover will point to a graveyard. The solar system will be unrecognizable. The Earth will likely be a scorched, lifeless cinder, its oceans boiled away into space, its atmosphere violently stripped by the expanding, dying red giant that used to be our sun. Every library that ever held a book, every server farm that ever stored a digital file, every museum, every battlefield, and every grave will have been reduced to highly ionized plasma. There will be no humans left to remember that we ever launched a probe in the late 20th century. There will be no record of the brilliant engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who fought to build it. No memory of the civilizations it represents. No lingering echo of the music etched into those microscopic grooves. The creators, the context, and the world that gave birth to the message will have been utterly erased from the fabric of reality, wiped clean by the merciless mechanics of stellar evolution. And yet, the creation will persist. It will continue its blind, silent, ballistic trajectory through the dark, passing dead stars, rogue exoplanets, and massive clouds of cold hydrogen gas. It will become an entity entirely divorced from the context of its origin. It will become an orphan of deep time. The terrifying consequence of building a truly immortal artifact is the sudden, chilling realization that it will spend the overwhelming, infinite majority of its existence completely alone. It is a monument that will eventually outlive its own meaning. A signifier drifting through the dark, pointing to a signified that no longer exists. We engineered a shadow that will outlast the object that cast it, and as this ghost ship slips further out of the gravitational grip of our sun, carrying the electrical echoes of our minds and the frozen maps of our dead world, we are left to grapple with the terrifying silence it leaves behind. A silence that forces us to look inward at the fragile, fleeting nature of our own existence and the dark, inevitable destination that awaits us all at the end of the cosmic clock. When you step outside tonight and look up at the black expanse between the stars, you are not looking at a canvas. You are looking at an executioner. The night sky is a sprawling, indifferent machine that operates on a scale so vast that our entire existence, every war we have fought, every equation we have solved, every god we have prayed, 2 is mathematically indistinguishable from 0. We are a thermodynamic glitch, a brief, chaotic spark of biology trapped at the bottom of a gravity well, frantically trying to carve our names into the ice before it melts. And for all our arrogance, for all our sprawling megacities and technological monuments, the universe does not know we are here. It does not care that we suffer. It will not mourn when the physics of our star inevitably wipe us out. There is no cosmic registry tracking our achievements, no galactic observer pausing to marvel at our art. We are a momentary chemical reaction taking place on a speck of silica, completely isolated in a vacuum that spans billions of light. The golden record is the ultimate subconscious admission of this terrifying truth. We did not launch it into the dark because we believed we were gods. We launched it because we finally understood that we are ghosts. We looked at the absolute certainty of our own extinction, and our response was not to fight it, but to build a tombstone, a perfect, immutable artifact of gold and copper, carrying the electrical echoes of a dead species doomed to wander an empty, frictionless ocean forever. In a million years, there will be no human eyes left to look at the stars. The Earth will be a sterilized cinder, stripped of its oceans, baked down to a hardened shell of glass and basalt by a swollen, dying sun. All the noise, all the panic, all the desperate scrambling of human history will have faded back into the silent background radiation of the cosmos. Our entire timeline will be compressed into a microscopic layer of carbon buried under the radioactive ash of the solar system. But out there, 15 billion miles away and pushing further into the abyss every second, a piece of us will still be moving. A blind, frozen cylinder of metal carrying a map to a world that no longer exists and a greeting that will never be answered. It will drift past dead nebulae and oceans of dark matter, perfectly preserving the geometry of our faces, the architecture of our DNA, and the sound of our rain. It will outlast the continents that birthed it. It will outlast the sun that warmed it. It will outlast the very concept of time as we currently understand it. It is the only thing we have ever made that truly matters. And in the grand mechanics of the cosmos, it is entirely, profoundly meaningless. There is no grand revelation waiting for us at the end of the void. There is no cosmic audience waiting in the shadows to applaud our survival or decipher our math. There is only the vacuum, the creeping absolute zero, and the slow, inescapable decay of matter. Look up at the dark. That is where our ghost is wandering, and that is all there is.